Good morning. Born to be free, Mark Petrino. This is Mark's Market Overview and Trading Research. We welcome you to the show. Good morning, August 13th. What a beautiful day it's going to be. Good morning, Mark Petrino.
Hello, how are you?
I'm excellent, man. Any better? I don't know. Don't know what I'd do with myself.
Oh man. So anyway, that thing last night, I didn't listen to it, but every American should be scared because if they could hack into X, when Elon Musk is there, and if they can hack into the presidential campaign websites, think about how easily they could bring down the power grid or do
Yeah, that
some real.
denial of service attack's pretty devastating to them too, because you have to be able to. What it does is it floods the port that the video is being or the audio is being sent on, and it floods it with all this traffic data information that's a little bit more than what normally would come through, and so the port's like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And then it's serious, man. They were able to fix it though, because I listened to it last night. I didn't get done with it till about 11:30. I listened to the replay, but you know, it is what it is. I know what's happening. You know what's happening. People that care about the country know what's happening. We just have to quit. We have to quit voting on, oh, this guy's mean, this guy's dumb. We have to vote on American freedoms and what we believe in. And if we've gotten this separated, I don't know that we're coming back from it.
I don't know, man. As you guys know, I read a lot about history. All these books, every single book back here is American history. And I got shelves over there. And it's actually been reading about J. Edgar Hoover, which is pretty interesting. The guy that was like the big head of the FBI or whatever.
Yeah.
And this kind of struck me. His father had such severe depression that he literally starved to death. Like he lost the will to live, and he couldn't even eat. Like, can you imagine that?
No, I can't. I like food.
And his grandfather, his father's father, killed himself by tying himself to this tree at low tide. So when the tide came in, he was underwater.
Holy smokes! That's just that's like, I don't know, man. That's a weird way to kill yourself. They didn't do any.
I guess nowadays we got drugs that can treat depression and counseling. Back then it was a little different. It was considered like a sign of weakness.
Yeah, but the tide comes in pretty slow, Mark. I mean, you've got to really want to kill yourself to tie yourself to a tree and watch the water come up a quarter of an inch at a time until you drown to death. That's he must have hated himself.
Pretty
wow.
Reader, and it's like, wow, geez. But yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to kind of see how crazy these progressives are. I mean, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, Independent, Conservative. How could you want people that aren't citizens to vote? Like, would I say, oh, guess what? There's an election going on in Guyana. I'm going to go vote for it. I mean,
well, it's no different than the tax on tips that's come up now that she's taken from Trump after they, in the Investment Reduction Act, or what was it, the Inflation Reduction Act,
yeah.
They added tips. They added tax on tips, and they added the 87,000 IRS agents to actually go after the people for the tips so that they could do more auditing. So, I mean, you can't have it both ways. And this flip-flop back and forth is just not legitimate. And it's a shame that people are being sucked into it.
Yeah, I mean, these people aren't serious people. Like who was I watching yesterday? Brett Baird, right? He's the guy who's the 2 handicap. He was interviewing this one Democrat, and this Democrat was like, oh, we'll see if Trump shows up at the election on the 10th. He's probably not even going to show up. And the guy's like, wait a second. He said he was going to show up. He said yes. So like, well, is he going to come or not? Is he going to show up? He's the type of guy. And he's like, dude, he said yes. He said he's coming. It's like these people will argue with you that the sun's not going to come up in the morning. Well, look at this. Researchers finally deciphered a set of 4,000-year-old Babylonian. let's see. It says they were discovered more than 100 years ago in Iraq. Let's see what they say here.
Yes,
Um,
Mr. Steve, she was the deciding vote. That was a draw in the Senate, and she cast the deciding vote. There's video of that. All you got to do is research. Part of what happens too, Mark. I'm sorry you're in this, but part of what happens too is like when you're on YouTube and you start watching a certain series of videos, they'll trap you into a lane. Like if you watch 10 conservative videos and 5 Democrat videos, they're going to show you more conservative videos. If you watch videos on survival, they're going to start showing you all kinds of survival videos, and then that's where your YouTube algorithm gets stuck, and so you can't find any different news. And we need to fix that too, so that people can look for whatever they want to look for without getting stuck. You know what I mean? Or come
well, that's what
across a
goes with
truth.
what I say. I think the country's biggest problem outside of our healthcare industry is just the lack of education and I shouldn't even say the lack of education because some people have educations, but they're dumbass educations. You know, like all the students up in Yale Law School. Okay, Yale Law School, supposed to be the cream of the crop, like the smartest people there are. They were protesting because one of the buildings is named Lynch Hall. And they're like, oh, Lynch, Lynch, Lynch. It's like the dude who gave you the money for the building's last name was Lynch. Like, that's going to offend you? Are you guys really that friggin' crazy?
Hey, check
But,
this out. Starbucks CEO has stepped down, Mark.
oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a coffee drinker. I actually find the smell of coffee quite nauseating, frankly.
Man, he must have been holding them back, Jason, because that thing's up $8, $7.
Does it say why he resigned?
No, I ain't gotten to the news portion of it. I'm just looking at what the move is in pre-market.
Oh, interesting. All right. So, anyway, here is something that we can look at right off the bat here for a potential trade today. Although it's pretty quiet, and I guess we got the PPI coming up at 8:30. But let me just clean this up here. So here's Starbucks SBUX, and again, right, we found our support over here, and then we rallied and we got to resistance. So this morning we're trading a little bit above this resistance, but I would say it's not too far above to kind of be like we're out of the woods. So there's a good chance that this moves today, right? Does it break out and keep going higher, or does it break down and reverse? So this is something that is, the stock's making a big move. It's gapping up on the opening. It's up 11%. So anyway, yeah, so that's something to kind of keep an eye on there. And let's see, I think Home Depot is due to report if they haven't already. Next earnings report today. So Home Depot trading down a little. So now if I was trading this, here's what I would be looking at, right? I would look at this bottom here and this bottom here. So there's a good chance there's going to be support here, and there's a good chance there's going to be resistance here. And we're trading kind of right in the middle of the range here. So that's something to watch there too. If we get up to the resistance level and it doesn't look like we're going to get through, we get some kind of a reversal, or if we get down to the level that was support. So there's people who bought here who regret buying now that the price is lower. So if it gets back to their price, they're going to try to sell to get out at break even. So it's a very common thing in markets, in all kinds of markets. You see the same chart patterns regardless of what it is that you're looking at. And that's because we're looking at the psychology of the people that are doing the trading as opposed to, whatever. Forget the stock. Just think about the people that are trading.
Hey, so the Chipotle CEO has taken over the CEO position at Starbucks, and Chipotle's down $5. That brings them back almost to the split price.
Huh.
Interesting. Too much cilantro for me.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't eat the rice. The rice makes me sick.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's any trade ideas over here. I think I'll take a look at Starbucks again.
That's interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, so that's something to keep an eye on. Let's take a look at the broad market here. This is one of those deals now where this is going to be a pretty easy market to read because it's just like it was. I don't know when it was, like a month or two ago. If there's one stock to watch, it's Apple, right? And look at Apple is back up to this important price level here, right around 218. So we could see here, we got a stock we got a price level that was resistance, and then it converted into support, and then it converted into resistance again. So now we're testing this resistance. And you can see some other patterns here too. Like here's your classic exhaustion gap. You tend to get gaps at two places in a trend, at the very beginning or at the very end. And it's because you can see here, there's your breakaway gap. Like this is the quote unquote smart money. They're really aggressive getting in. This is the quote unquote dumb money. They're people that have just been watching and waiting for the price to come down so they can buy at a better price. Finally, they throw in the towel and they're like, oh, I'm just going to go buy it at whatever price I can. And they're usually the last people to the party. So there's your exhaustion gap. And here's your classic breakaway gap again. Here's your classic bearish engulfing pattern, right? Which was bearish. And sure enough, 2 days later, we had this big move lower. So anyway, if there's one thing to really watch today, it's going to be Apple. I think as goes Apple, as goes Apple.
As goes the market.
As goes the market. Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, I think I have the gene because it tastes like soap to me, Brandy. And I didn't know you could do that, Jason. I thought you had to get the rice with your food. I may try that next time because the power beans are bad. They're good or good.
Do you guys have Jersey Mike's over there?
Oh yeah.
The reason why I bring that up is because here in Stanford, the Jersey Mike's is right next door to Chipotle. Now, I didn't realize that Jersey Mike's had been around so long, but I was watching on the History Channel, like the food that made America, which is really cool. I think if you're someone who's into the markets, you should really study history because things never, there's nothing new under the sun, right?
No.
Things repeat themselves or whatever. But anyway, so Subway and Jersey Mike's were in this big battle, and the guys at Subway came up with this idea of we'll bake the bread in the store, and that will be appealing to people. And that's actually what made Subway overcome Jersey Mike's. And now Subway is literally, I don't know if you can consider a restaurant, but they say it's the biggest restaurant in the world.
Mark, when I had my little barbecue business, I had a fan on top of my roof, and whenever it would blow the pecan smoke out of the smoker, I'd blow it out into the highway. So as people were driving by, they'd be like, man, that smells good. And they'd come in and get some ribs.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, here's our S&P trading up a little bit this morning. Again, we got the numbers here at 8:30. So what's there to watch here? Well, 533 on the downside. I would say 538 on the upside. And let's take a look. It looked like oil was making a big move. Yeah, so oil's kind of come a far way here. Now, I know some of you all have some kind of energy exposure. Now, me, I would say 80-80, which is only $1 away. I don't know. I might give it another $1, but it was kind of cool to catch this bottom here. And, it wasn't anything exceptional. It wasn't like rocket science. It was just, hey, we get to a level. Well, Dr. Pufferstein is going nuts. We get to a level that was support before, right? Same thing here. This chart just shows you tend to find support or bottoms at levels that were former bottoms. Now, I think that this is kind of friggin' profound that you could get this market that's as big as the oil market, and you can get levels that are with such precise, clarity here. I mean, look at that. Like we're within literally, I don't know, 20, 30 cents. And the oil market is like so freaking big. It's kind of hard to even, fathom or comprehend. And yet somehow you get these really precise levels. So I think, in my opinion, that people, like, there's a lot about technical analysis that people take for granted. And that's because so many of the people that are practitioners of it are, don't really get it. And even a lot of the people that are prominent, right? Like, they look for these patterns, but they don't really know what they mean. So this line here
That's
is a
awesome.
Bollinger Band. This is 2 standard deviations below the 20-day moving average. So if we get outside of that, it's considered overbought. That's going to draw buyers into the market. So what do we have here? Markets that are oversold. Did I say overbought? I meant oversold. If we get below that to the downside, we're oversold. So markets that are oversold and get to a level that was support before tend to rebound. Markets that get to support and are oversold tend to rally. So the same thing happened over here.
For oil. So Mary, you can trade XOM, which is Exxon. You can do Chevron, which is CVX, and you can
USO is the fund that
that's the fund
tracks oil. So for a retail investor, this is your probably your best exposure.
You also have drip and gush, which are the inverse, and what's the inverse to the invert? Would it be it wouldn't be the verse? So you got the bull and the bear would be drip and
now these follow the oil and gas exploration and production sector. So industry, I should say.
Gotcha.
So these are going to get some exposure to natural gas too, but yeah, in general, these things all kind of go in the same direction. So
And
drip,
gush
and
is
what's
the
the other
other.
one?
Gush,
Gush.
GUS. Yeah. So I had this old guy tell me that I couldn't barbecue until I made good chicken. And so I just started working on my chicken. Then I did pulled pork ribs. And then I started doing sliced, the collars, Brandy. The collars are really good. It's the same thing that Sonny's does when it does its sliced pork. It's actually this neck muscle in the hog instead of the shoulder. It worked really good.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that like every city's got its own kind of take on it. But I guess that's kind of fading out now.
And then I had a North Carolina vinegar sauce that I like to do, man. And you could put that stuff on a flip flop.
All right, so this is the iShares oil and gas exploration ETF. So this would be the iShares, and then this would be the Spider XOP. So basically, what they are is the same product, but they're just different fund families. In other words, the Spiders are a company, and they're run by State Street, and then the iShares are a different company. So they're pretty much tracking pretty much the same thing. So they're going to be very correlated. Does it really make a difference? Me personally, if I was going to buy this, I would buy the XOP just because it has so much more volume in it. This averages 3 million shares a day, whereas this averages 90,000 shares a day, which for a retail investor, that's still a lot. But all else being equal, I think you're probably in general better off getting with the one that's got more liquidity. All right, let's go.
Mary, you know what I'm talking about, Mary. That vinegar sauce in North Carolina is ridiculous. It really is. Oh, sorry, hit you again there, Steve.
How are you on copper?
Let's take a look. Should be SCCO.
SOCO, yeah, that's one way. So here's copper. And I could kind of see where you're coming from. Made a reversal here. Or I guess it's a little too soon to tell, but looks like we could be having a reversal here. So one of the things we want to look at what we just talked about, markets that are oversold that get to support tend to rally. So this has gotten to a level that was resistance and it became support. It's resistance there too. So once again, you see these same patterns and things that are completely different from each other. Like how different is copper from oil, but we see the same things. So sometimes you can get insight into if there's going to be a trend change if a lot of volume trades. And that doesn't seem to be the case here. But price action is always more important. You could kind of see it over here. See like this big spike in volume here? I don't like these colors that they, give. I saw some guy on LinkedIn last night, who's obviously a Trump hater, because he was just bashing DJT, and he was like, "Oh, the volume's been all on the sell side." I mean, that's just a dumb statement because for every buyer there's a seller. So how is the volume on the sell side? But anyway, this would be your kind of capitulation on the upside, right? People finally throw in the towel and say, "All right, I'm going to go buy it." Just like we're watching this A, B, and B. Whoops. But that's something I've never really kind of understood is people just don't get the volume. I mean, for every buyer, there's a seller. There's no such thing as like sell side volume or buy side volume. It's just like volume. And another thing I got to say is I was doing this work with a little bit of work with this AI company, and some of the stuff is really pretty cool. But basically, I was looking for questions to kind of see if I could find stuff that was wrong. And like look at this here, like a dark pool. So all this does is goes and pulls this off,
The internet.
pulls it off somewhere off of the internet, maybe Wikipedia or whatever. But I will tell you this: as someone who was an institutional trader for over 20 years, there's no difference between trading in a dark pool or any other kind of an exchange. All of this stuff here where it says, you know, institutional investors can trade large blocks of shares without exposing their attentions to the market. I mean, that's just stupid. I mean, that's because you can trade on any exchange. It's all the same thing. Do you show your hand? Do you not show your hand? It also says like retail traders don't have access to dark pools. That's a fallacy too, because if you trade through TD Ameritrade and you put in an order to buy 100 shares of Apple, it could end up in their dark pool. At the end of the day, when you're a trader, you don't care where your trade is executed. You just want to get it done, whether it's on a dark pool or whether it's on an ETS or whether it's on an exchange. It's kind of interesting, I think. Here's my theory. Back in the early 2000s,
This is a good question from Postman. I wanted to put that out there, but I figured to get you started on how great you are.
how do I would well let me continue on the dark pools first and then we'll
You
address
go.
that. But back in the early 2000s, right? Dark pools were started by brokers. Dark pools are basically a private exchange, and when you're a person like me who was the head of trading at a buy side firm, they come around and they pitch these things to you like, oh, you should trade with us. We're the best dark pool around, blah, 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 blah. And they had this thing where they called it a dark pool. And they basically said, if you trade in this dark pool, no one's going to see it. Hence, it's dark. But that's not true. Everything that trades has to be reported to the tape. You can even see down here, right? Like it says up here, dark pools lack transparency. And then right down here, dark pools report trades maintaining transparency. So these 2 points just completely contradict each other. So anyway, I think that in the retail mindset, when they hear dark pool, if they think it's like dark, like it's bad or it's evil, dark pools, all they are private exchanges. They're neither good nor bad. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. I
So do
asked
you
you,
go in and tell them that you need to fix that, like take that comment out and leave the other one in that shows about the transparency?
yeah, I did. So they're like training this model, I guess. But
That's
but this
good,
is
Mark.
just pulling something off of the internet. So I would imagine if you use any place that has like kind of like a similar thing, it's just going to go out and find the same answers. But yeah, I mean, this is just untrue. I asked about market makers. The market makers answer was pretty good.
But the more that they train this model and the more you actually go through and pick out the get nitpicky on the details, the more impressive this AI will become. And that's why they're using you, is because you have to train these large language models to do it. Are they on Llama? Is that what they use?
What?
Llama for the AI.
I have no idea. I don't want to ask too many questions because I don't want to look stupid. but,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah. So Foot Locker, is that what we're looking at here? All right, so Foot Locker is a little bit. Here's what I would be looking at here, right? Overbought.
In the gap, yeah.
We're in a place here where we might be about to refill a gap. Remember, one of the main reasons why we get resistance is because we get these remorseful buyers trying to sell to get out at break even, right? Like we buy there, and then the price goes down and it's like, all right, well, we're backed up to my price. I'm going to get out of break even if I can. Same thing with this peak over here. When you gap through prices like this, there's no trading. It closed here and it opened here the next day. So if there's no trading, there was no one who was buying who's going to be trying to sell on the way back up. So that means when we get to a price, if we gap or move quickly through price levels, and then eventually we reverse and get back to those same price levels coming in the opposite direction, then you tend to move quickly back through those levels because there's just not as much vested interest. You can even kind of see that here. Rapid move up, spent about 2 weeks trading sideways, reversed, and got back to those price levels. One of the main reasons why we get support is because you get remorseful sellers trying to buy stuff back. Well, when you rip really fast through there is trading, but there's not as much as would be in, say, like a range like here. So anyway, so this could refill the gap, and there's a good chance there's going to be some resistance up around there, around 33.5. So I would have this on my radar screen now if we get close to around 33.5 for a potential reversal. So I think it's a good idea for traders to find trades that are set up. In other words, stuff that looks like a move is imminent, whether it's overbought, oversold, broke a trend, and then you have your trigger price. So the way I would approach this would be, all right, let's just say we get to 33.50, which is where this support over here was, and then we reverse and we get back below 33. Like that would be my trigger to get in on the short side, meaning buy puts. So the setup is like when the starter is like on your mark, get ready, get set, but there's no go yet. The go is when is what we call the trigger, and that's what actually makes you get into the trade. So if that was the case, my initial stop out would be like, all right, if we reverse and get back above 33.50, I'm going to say, you know what, I'm wrong here. I'm just going to close out with a small loss. And then not necessarily never see it again, like kiss it goodbye, never see it again. Just keep it on the radar screen to see if the idea was right, but maybe the timing was a little off. If we start to reverse again, then you can kind of get on the short side. So now my target would be down here for a profit, would be around 31. So again, we rally, get to a level that was potentially resistance or will potentially be resistance, but we don't do anything yet. We wait for the reversal to start. And you got to have everyone loves talking about what they're going to buy, but people never talk about how they're going to sell. And when you're going to sell, basically two things are going to happen. Forget the break even, but you're either going to take a profit or take a loss. And both of those invoke emotional responses from people. And when emotions get involved, that's when trading gets tricky. It's easy to trade on paper, but once you have real money on the line, then things get kind of complicated.
Couple of questions
What
here.
do you mean? How do I get the lines to appear automatically? I'm not sure what Postman is asking.
But then would you buy the call now? And how many days would you give the gap to refill, Mark?
No, I wouldn't buy the call now because it's overbought. There's a chance that it reverses and goes lower. So I would wait for it to go higher. So I would have this on the idea as a potential idea on the short side. I wouldn't buy the calls because we're overbought. So that lessens the chance that we just rip right through this gap here. All right. So a lot of times you might have 10 or 20 trades on your radar screen that could be set up, but the trigger never gets triggered. So you might have 20 setup trades and maybe you get triggered in 3 of them, or maybe you get triggered in 5 of them or 10 of them. But I think I think when you're coming up with a trading model, you need to have a couple parts. One is your setup, then 2 is your trigger, then 3 is your exit strategy. And you got to have an exit strategy for a gain, and you got to have an exit strategy for a loss. So everyone loves buying a new stock. It's like, oh, I bought this new stock. It's like it's like I went on a date. I got a new friend, blah, 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 blah. You got this thing you can watch. You can get in chat rooms and talk about it. But how are you going to exit the position? Knowing how to exit is more important than knowing what to buy. That's one of my sayings is knowing how to sell is more important than knowing what to buy. So whenever you take a position, you got to be thinking, all right, here is my strategy for a profit, and here is my strategy for a loss. All right, let's just do a quick run through these sectors here. So
Waiting on PPI right now to show up.
I don't think I would be looking and thinking in terms of days. I would just be thinking in terms of levels. If it breaks back below that 33 level, whether it takes 1 day or 5 days, that's what I would be thinking of. All right, so now here is XLK, which is the biggest sector in the market, our technology sector. And we're at a level where there's at this 210 level, which has been important before. So resistance here became support here, became support again. So we're bumping right up against here. So this is going to be driven by Apple. But two things to watch. You know, XLK, how does this navigate around 210? And then the Apple, how does it navigate around uh,
So, Mark,
218?
core PPI came in at 0%. Month over month, year over year, it came in at 2.4%. So it's down from 3 last month. I don't see that myself in my own spending, but yeah, so all good numbers.
Let's see here. Yeah, so SPY's up a little bit on it. I don't know. It probably added about 20 basis points. So anyway, so we got to, so now this 538 level is going to come into play there. So S&P, you know, look for resistance around 538. XLK, how does it navigate 210, which is right where we're trading, 209.50. So that's up about 1%.
Well, you got to be careful holding those inverse ETFs overnight, man. Those things will beat you to death.
Yeah, so here's Microsoft. Right. So here is another important thing to watch here. So a lot of these, you know, these big tech stocks are getting to levels where there's a good chance there's going to be resistance. So that could put a top on things. Let's look at Nvidia. Yeah, Nvidia is not so clear, but looks like Nvidia's got some room to run. This is probably why the SPY is up this morning, because this is up 2.8%. But I think it could get up to 118, which is here's an interesting thing. Oh, you know what? Let's bring up the Trump stock, because this is what I wrote about yesterday. Because it's the same kind of a thing here. Actually, see these lower highs? This is not your classic textbook rectangle pattern. I mean, sorry, descending triangle pattern. But a lot of times when you get to a level that was support, and you want to know if the support's going to break, if you get this series of lower highs leading into the support, there's a good chance the support is going to break, because it tells us that as time is going by here, the buyers are content with hanging out down here. But as time is going by, the sellers are getting more aggressive. In other words, they're willing to sell at lower prices. So the descending triangle tells us that we have aggressive sellers and can place in buyers. So the same pattern has just showed up in the DJT stock. Now, it's not, you know, it's not textbook, but you get a support level that's held. In other words, the buyers have been okay with hanging out and waiting. But as time is going by, the sellers are getting more aggressive. So this peak formed at a lower level than this one. This was a little bit of a head fake there, but this peak formed at a lower level than this one. So as time is going by, the buyers are like, yeah, whatever, hanging out. You know, if it comes to me, great. If not, you know, I don't care. But the sellers are getting more and more freaked out. So now I don't know. Does this trade options? I would trade 7 million shares a day.
Yeah, it trades options. It's been open long enough. Once it de-SPAC'd, I think it started trading options.
So now if this support here breaks, I would say maybe if this gets down around 22, if we clear this bottom over here, which is let's say it's 23. So if this gets below 23, I would be considering going on the short side over here. And that would be my target down here, the former level that was resistance. Why did SQQQ just start going down?
You're not dumb, Googly.
Why did cis triple Q just start going down, even though the numbers? I don't know. Maybe people are just trading ahead of the number. But, that's all. And remember, for every buyer, there's a seller. So half of those people that traded it were right, and half of the people that traded it were wrong. Why is the 10-year yield going down? All right, so let's think about this. So inflation the numbers came in lower than estimated. So that's going to put downward pressure on interest rates. So that's why. Let's look at the TNX here. I mean, it's not a big move, but yeah, that's why. So if inflation is petering out, it could tell us that the economy is slowing down, which would be lower interest rates. That's the thing about these economic numbers. Sometimes good news is good news, and sometimes good news is bad news. Or in other words, what's good for the economy could be bad for the market, and what's bad for the economy can be good for the market. So here, now, again, not your textbook pattern, but you get your descending triangle type pattern here. Now, this is something that should kind of blow everyone's mind. Or see, there's your descending triangle. So buyers hanging out, sellers getting more aggressive, sets the stage for a move lower. Think about how big the treasury market is, and where did this find a top? Way back here in October, exactly at 5%, not 5.01, not 4.99, but exactly at 5%. That just shows you how it's people that are thinking about the trading, right? And another thing that we got to address is these algorithms. Like I saw, I was looking at some site. It was one of these teaching sites, which actually looks pretty stupid, frankly. But it's like 75% of trades are done by algorithms. Well, I would say it's probably more like 98% of trades, unless someone's crossing a block of stock. How else is it going to trade? All an algorithm is a computer program. Like an easy algorithm to understand would be buy me. I don't know. Let's look at financials. Buy me 10% of the volume.
What's crossing a block of stock?
Crossing a block is well, it tends to happen with stuff that's illiquid. So say there's like 5,000 shares on a tape, and you got to sell 100,000 shares, and you go out into the market, and your broker finds someone who wants to buy 100,000 shares. Well, then you just they just put the trade together, and they print it. So it doesn't go out into any computerized thing. But remember, algorithms don't drive themselves. They don't exist in the ethos. It's people use them, or people like, if no one presses the enter button, the algo is not going to go out there. So like a real easy algo to understand would be, all right, buy me 10% of the volume. So I put that in at XLF. At the end of the day, I see 20 million shares is traded. Wow, yesterday was a really light day. So that's like less than half the average volume. So you would know that at the end of the day, you had 2 million shares. Or your algorithm could say, all right, well, buy me 10% of the volume, but if the stock goes down by 3%, increase my buy order to 12% of the volume. I mean, it could be a whole plethora of different things. And, so there's no big deal. Just like dark pools are not a big deal. Like algorithms aren't a big deal either. They're neither good nor bad. They just are. And some algorithms from the user point of view are good and some aren't, right? Like I had these two firms that I used to get algorithms from, and I could put the same instructions on one and I put on the other one. Well, the first one sucks. Doesn't get any volume, I could put out there, the stock is traded 5,000 shares. But so if I'm not going to cross a block, if I can't find a seller, all right, buy me 100,000 shares if you can with this price top. And I could put that out in one algorithm and nothing happens. I could put the same order out on a different algorithm, and the same type of algorithm, but offered by a different provider. And all of a sudden the volume just starts coming in. Wham, 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 wham. So from the user point of view, you're using two different companies. The algorithms have the exact same strategies, but one of them sucks and one of them is good. One of them doesn't get any volume. One of them does. Now, why is that? Well, it depends that where all these algorithms are linked into. There's like 60 or 70 different trading venues these days. So some are linked together, some aren't. So the algorithm that's not finding volume is not in the right venue where the volume is trading or where the seller is. In other words, if someone wants to sell 100,000 shares on and they're in dark pool X, but the algorithm isn't exposed or linked to dark pool X, it's not going to find those shares. If I
Very
have another
interesting.
algorithm that is linked to dark pool X, it's going to find those shares, and that's where the volume is going to come in. So all algorithms are computerized tools. Now, you can get more complicated with like quantitative trading and so forth. But yeah, so that's the story. Algorithms are neither
Interesting.
good nor bad.
So
Will the
Postman,
PPI numbers today influence how much the September rate cut will be? Well, let's think about that for a second here. So if inflation is lower, that could mean that there's less incentive for the Fed to cut rates. So by the end of the day, this news could end up being perceived as negative.
right.
But we can't really pay too much attention to the news. They kind of just they spew a lot of misinformation. And remember, it's entertainment. If you look at these financial channels, it's not really like real news. All right, so healthcare is holding up pretty well.
Need to look at natural gas as well.
Yeah, I mean, not too much going on here. It's unchanged. If we do rally, though, I'd be looking for resistance up around here again, 227. So you notice what was the bottom over here became resistance over here. So support here becomes resistance here, and it becomes resistance again. But as of right now, there doesn't really seem to be much going on over there. All right, let's see what's going on in our headline news.
Hey, how about Bitcoin real
Electric
quick? Sorry.
scooters. I see a lot of those things around here.
Yeah, we got a lot of them here in Gainesville too. All right. Now that's what I'm talking about. Now we could get rid of breakdancing and bring baseball back. That'd be good. Listen, did you see the chick? She was a doctor of breaking in Australia, and she scored a 0 on her routine.
Wow.
Actually went to school to be a doctor for breaking. I don't even understand how you could pay your way to college to go out there and break dance. That just
So she got a
doesn't make
0, huh?
sense.
Jeez.
Got a 0 from
Even I
Australia.
could
She
probably do
was
better than that.
right. Hey, check Bitcoin before we leave today.
Jay-Z loves cassettes. Gosh, I have all my Grateful Dead cassettes. They probably don't work anymore. But I got like 700 or 800 cassettes out of my garage. I mean, I haven't played them in 30 years, so I doubt they still work. But that was a big thing that us deadheads used to do, is try to collect as much stuff as we could.
How many mixtapes did you make for Kate?
What's that?
Did you make any mixtapes for Kate? Got the Kate Jam tape?
Nah, she just
Come
pretended
on.
she liked the Dead when she was courting me.
You're welcome, Brandon. Have a great day.
All right, so I'm sorry. What was the question? What do I? Oh, Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
And it used to get like competitive. Like people would try to get more. They would say like, "Oh, I got more hours than you. I got 700 hours on tape."
Yep.
All right, so Bitcoin. Notice how we found this little support level here around. I would call it 58.7. If we rally, I'd be looking around 61.1. But pretty much nothing really going on here this morning. So it said Home Depot reported. Let's look at that. All right, so it's down, but it's not down a lot. I mean, be looking right here for this like short-term support. If I was trading this, if it gets down to here, there's a chance it might bounce. When things get to support, you have to consider support is like this large group of buyers, and sometimes the buyers get worried they're going to miss out, because if someone else is willing to pay a higher price, that's who the sellers are going to go to. So they start to outbid each other, and you get these like bidding wars.
Hershey for Steve, if you could. So, Brandy, what flavor barbecue was the Colorado barbecue? Was it just like a Southwestern type flavor?
My daughters thought Jerry Garcia was their uncle until they were about 10. I'll tell you, it's very tragic, man. It's hard to believe. I'm 54. Jerry died when he was 53. And you look at pictures of him at the end there, and it's like the guy looked like he was 90 because of
Yeah.
the heroin, man. He couldn't kick the heroin.
Yep.
And actually, when he died, he was in rehab. He checked himself into rehab, but he should have been under the care of a doctor with like methadone. He tried to quit cold, and his body couldn't handle it.
Nice.
But it's amazing how many great musicians die because of heroin. Charlie Parker, I think he was like 28 years old. That's it. I used to work with this guy that was a heroin addict. Like back, he was older than me. He was like back in the 70s. He hadn't touched the stuff in like 25 years. And he was just like, Mark, every morning when I wake up for like the first 20 minutes, I crave it. And he hadn't touched it in 20 years.
That's crazy, man.
Any other drug, your body will eventually get over, whether it's Coke or alcohol or whatever. But, I have a cousin who died of a heroin overdose. She was only, gosh, I think younger, lower 30s, I think.
That's
Pretty bad
sad,
stuff,
man.
man.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so Hershey, I don't know, Mr. Steven. Looks pretty neutral here. Not really seeing much. I mean, on the short term, might be some resistance up here around 202 again. All right, so let me just take a look at my favorite stock market site because I like the gossip here. Investors have opportunity to buy the dip. 20 stocks the bears can't easily short. B. Riley collapses. So this had a big short interest on it. But when they're saying you can't easily short them, that means the short interest is already high.
Very nice, Brandy. My little barbecue stand was called the GT Grill, the Good Times Grill. You can find it on Facebook. Got some quality. Got some quality barbecue. You can see pictures of my old food.
All right, let's see what it is. Difficult to short stocks are likely to lag the market. Few investors are aware of this.
Brandy, I would think your 15 minutes was the cameraman for Jason, dude. That's pretty cool. That would go into my bio immediately. Mark, we got a question here from Jonathan. He says thoughts on CPI report already being priced in. This one might be different because the volatility has been so different in the previous months. What do you think?
Well, they tend to kind of have some kind of a correlation, the PPI and the CPI. So if the PPI is lower than estimates, there's a good chance the CPI is going to be too. Let's see what the actual numbers are versus the estimates here. Now, why are they showing a grocery store for PPI? I mean, this is probably one of those things where it's like, someone just used AI and to get the picture, they didn't proof it. All right, so let's see here. So increase 0.1. All right, so it wasn't that much better than estimates. It came in at 0.1. Estimates were 0.2. Down from June. I mean, my guess is that the CPI will be probably a little bit less than estimates as well. And this could end up being a thing where, what's good for the economy is bad for the market, because if inflation is less than expected, then that's going to take away some of the incentive or reason for the Fed to be cutting. Yeah.
Hey, Brandon, I got a super secret. Well, it's not super secret because I'm fixing to give it to you, but a chicken wing recipe. Get some Everglades heat because you can get this where you live. Get some Everglades heat, some Everglades regular, mix them together. Put a pinch of garlic in it. Season your chicken wings, fry them up, and then let them sit for 24 hours. Fry them up, and then make some Chipotle ranch. Dude, that's just the best chicken wing you've ever had in your life.
We don't really get a good barbecue. I mean, there's a couple of them, but not around here. In Stanford, there's a lot of Mexican restaurants and Latino restaurants, and there's a lot of Italian restaurants. Yeah, Stanford's got a nice little downtown here. It's probably the nicest city in Connecticut, which really kind of isn't saying much.
Connecticut's pretty small, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but Bridgeport, Hartford, like New Haven, these cities are really bad. Like You know that show Live PD, which I love watching, where they
Mm-hmm.
they have the live cameras go out with the cops on Friday and Saturday nights. I think they call it Live Patrol now. They were doing it for Bridgeport, and they go to different countries or different states, and it's like, okay, we're here now in Georgia where officers are found a teenage drinking party, and it's like, okay, now we're coming to you from Bridgeport where you know the SWAT team is responding to a gunfight over here, and so anyway, what happened was the president of Bridgeport University got into contact with the mayor. The mayor, by the way, of Bridgeport, did 10 years in jail. He was mayor before. He did 10 years in jail. Then he got reelected. Um,
All right.
but
Marion
it, but
Barry
anyway,
style.
but anyway, he called up the mayor. Was like, we can't have this, or else no one's going to apply to our school anymore. But my brother's a cop, and he was like, there are places in Bridgeport where the cops don't even go into. It's so bad. And the difference about Stanford is because we're a suburb of New York City. All the 20 years ago, all the hedge fund money came up here, and there's a lot of Bridgewater, point 72 is in Stanford, so there's a lot of revenue base, which is kind of different. There's no hedge funds as far as I know based in Bridgeport. Well, Guli, I would say if you're trading the S triple Qs, don't watch them. Watch the Qs. Because the S triple Qs are just going to follow. Well, actually, they're going to go the opposite way. But the chart, because it's a leverage thing, the chart's going to be more volatile. So this next support level for the Qs would be the short Qs would be the next resistance level for here. So I would say I would be looking right there. I would say 457 on the Qs would be, if we get to there, that's where the support would be on the triple Qs, which are inverse as triple Q, which would probably correspond to down around 850. But again, if it was me, I would be watching the Qs because the S triple Qs is leverage. So because it's leveraged, there's going to just be more volatility and more movement. All right, everyone, I guess I'm going to get going if you don't have any other questions, and we'll see you all back here tomorrow morning.
Hey, Brandy, those wings were probably those, and the chicken that I used to do were probably my best item. And the guy taught me how to do well. He gave me some pointers for chicken, but that's really kind of your own thing. But here's the secret to good chicken. If you'll cook the chicken breast, if you do like a quarter, you cook the chicken breast to 167 degrees, and then you pull it off. And if the chicken gets anything more than that, it becomes rubbery. If it gets any less than that, it's raw. But if you get it right around 165, it's really good food. So, but anyway, there you go. A little barbecue tips today. You get a well-rounded show here at Stock Market Jobber. Thank you for coming with us today, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.